Hello, welcome. I am so glad everyone's here to join us today. We are here for the Architect Community Meetup, and I have Jacob Small and Emily Bisaga Dunne with me. I'm very excited to have them on. They'll be talking about some generative design and visualization stuff. So while we're waiting, I would love to know where you are coming in from. So we have quite a large crowd. We had over 900 people register today, so I am going to give them a couple of minutes to get logged in, get their audio working. But if you could open up your questions panel and send me a little note to let me know where you're coming in from. I see David is coming in from Darby, Pennsylvania. Nice to have you. Another David from Vancouver. Two Andrews. We've got Andrew from Connecticut, and it's rolling so fast. Let's see. Oh, both of you from Connecticut. Oh, okay, so it's the same Andrew. Sorry. One you'd put one in from New Haven and one from Fairfield. So great to have you. Daniel from Paris, France. Nice to have you. Pablo from Vancouver, Canada. Vivek from India. Derek from Portland, Oregon. Michael from St. Louis, Missouri. Great to have all of you. Michael, and another Michael. So we had Michael Anderson from Missouri, and we've got Michael Fowler from Houston. Great. Norm from Fort Worth. Marina, I believe it might be how you say it, is from Montreal, Canada. Nice to have you. Jessica from Jersey City. Mark from Du Bois. Mark Haworth from Manchester. Great, in the UK. Michael Hudson from Scotland. I love seeing this global audience. It's so wonderful. Olamida, maybe. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, from Nigeria. It's nice to have you on. Jamie from Jacksonville, Florida. Luciana from Mesquite, Texas. Katie from Cincinnati, Ohio. So great to have all of you on. And I apologize, I'm not able to say everyone's names. We have so many on today. This is wonderful. I love seeing this large crowd. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and start going through some of the orders of business while the others finish getting logged in. And when I'm done, I'll turn it over to Jacob and Emily to give you a little bit more information about themselves and talk to you about what they have for you today. So just a little forewarning, just our safe harbor statement. We may or may not talk about futuristic ideas that we are working on putting into the software. Please do not make any buying decisions based on anything we say today. I think for the most part, they'll cover things that are already in the software, but just in case, we want to make sure that you know that any forward-looking statements are not guarantees of future performance or options. And before we begin, I do want to let you know that everyone's lines are muted. That does not mean you're off the hook, you don't have to participate. I highly encourage participation. The only reason we reduce the lines are muted is to reduce that background noise, because we are recording this, and everyone who registered will receive a recording of this after we're done. That way you can share it with friends, watch it again, coworkers, whoever you want to share it with. If you do have questions, I highly encourage you to ask them. If you have a question that's very relevant as they are presenting, I will maybe interrupt them and ask that question so it seems more in line with what they're talking about. Or if it seems like something a little bit more general, I might wait till the end to ask the question. So we'll just play it by ear and see how it goes. But I do encourage questions. And in fact, when we get to the question and answer part of the presentation, I highly encourage you to raise your hand in that our audience or the attendees panel so that I can unmute your line and we can have a little bit of a conversation back and forth. That way you can ask your question live, they can answer it, and you can ask any follow-up questions that might go with it. Just as a reminder, these are all of the virtual meetups. I know we had quite a large audience today, larger than our normal, so I wanted to remind everyone what meetups we have available. The majority of them are AEC meetups, with the exception of this electrical engineer, that's more for manufacturing, and the mechanical engineer is more for manufacturing. If you are an electrical or mechanical engineer that does building design, I highly encourage you to join our building engineering meetup on the fourth Thursday of the month. Now, some of you may remember AU is coming up. The deadline to submit your proposals was June 22nd. However, if you would like to present, I would like to offer the opportunity to be part of the meetups. We are going to hold our meetups at during AU, and since it's all virtual, we've decided to possibly look into having you do some lightning rounds. What does that mean? Well, we're going to invite you as our customers to talk about what workflows have really helped you either save time or money, or maybe you want to share some best practices that you've developed at your firm. Maybe you want to share some tips and tricks. The key is we're looking for people to do 5-minute talks and then a 5-minute Q&A afterward, which will allow us to, look at a couple of different workflows to help you be more efficient. If you are interested in presenting, go ahead and send me an email directly. It's michelle.rasmussen@autodesk.com by July 31st with the subject line Architect Meetup at AU. That way I know exactly what meetup you're looking to present at, and I can put those topics together. What we'll do is at the August, oops, I meant to put architect in there, at the August Architectural Community Meetup, we will vote on all of the different workflows, and the top 4 will be selected to speak. All right, so with that, I am going to go ahead and make Jacob my presenter. And while I'm doing that, Jacob, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us, what you do at Autodesk and why you're here with us.
Yeah, sure thing. So I do have a bio slide that's coming up, but my name is Jacob Small. I am a designated support specialist at Autodesk, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that I help customers adopt applications at kind of a high level. My specialty is in generative design and BIM, and I'm also joined today by Emily Dunne. So are you guys seeing my screen okay now? Emily, can you just give a quick thumbs up? Yeah. All right. Cool. Let's not delay any further here. Emily, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot to go through. Hey, I am Emily Bisaga Dunne. I'm currently the Industry Outcomes Lead for Building Design here at Autodesk. I was previously an evangelist. Also, I did some consulting with generative design opportunities with customers. And I've also worked with Jacob as a premium support specialist and even on some similar accounts. So you can see I have a pretty diverse portfolio. The portfolio ranges from civic centers to multifamily developments, some bridge conceptual design, the ultimate smart office of the future for HP. And then I've, worked with all of these customers below right. I worked at Troy Cobus, MG2, and CBT. Hopefully some of you on the call are familiar with this. And also worked with Jacob at CBT. So that was pretty cool that we're both at Autodesk now.
Yeah, cool. Again, I'm a designated support specialist, again, focusing on generative design and BIM, which is kind of a high level way of saying I help customers adopt Revit, Dynamo, and generative design for Revit at kind of a high level. A bit of additional background about me. I've sort of trained as an architect. My undergrad is a Bachelor's of Architecture from Wentworth Institute of Technology. A few other fun things about me. I misread the social distancing guidelines, so I took and moved myself 6 time zones away from my coworkers as opposed to 6 feet. In my free time, I spend quite a bit of it reading, not necessarily responding to every single new first post within the Dynamo forum within 30 hours of posting. That just sort of keeps me plugged into the community. So if you ever post there, know that I have read it. I also find comfort in reading Revit journals. They're kind of like Dr. Seuss for me, but with a little bit less rhyming. And I do specialize in kind of making really complex things more attainable and understandable. This is probably my best bio. As you can see, I spend quite a bit of time on the Dynamo forum. And as Emily mentioned, we go way back together. So this is a photo of us from back at AU last year. We've got some other selfies as well from back at our time at CBT together. All right, so I'll turn it over to Emily here.
Yeah, so this presentation that we're gonna give is really about community trends and connected BIM. So when we think about connected BIM, we're thinking about BIM, concept design, viz, project delivery, computational, and generative, but it's even a much broader scope than what we're thinking about. But to kind of break it down into some bullet points, maybe 3 years ago, we were just thinking about connected BIM as BIM plus the power of the cloud. At this point, we're thinking of connected BIM really as building information modeling at the center of the process, and then being able to manage and curate your data flow between all of your teams. There's an element of a cloud-based CDE, but beyond that, we think that connected BIM needs to expand into process automation, computational, and generative design. And Jacob, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the big thing with sort of process automation, once you get into that connected BIM workflow, because all your data is accessible, you can automate pretty much all the things at some level. And the more you do that, the more sort of those efficiency gains you're going to get within those sort of mundane tasks. And the more you're going to focus on the content that really matters to you in terms of the design aspect. That'll free up some time to get into a little bit more generative design or computational design to sort of expedite your model authoring, or making sure that when you've got conflicting goals of like, hey, I want to let as much light into the space as possible, but not let any heat into the space whenever possible. And as we know, sunlight equals heat. So those conflicting goals, how do you sort of resolve that? And generative design can absolutely help on that front.
Yeah. And on that note, we're thinking about outcome-based design project strategy, and generative design has really informed like how we approach projects in such a way that we're really thinking about architectural and engineering design projects as a data-driven approach. And there's like a whole framework that goes along with that. So we'll show you some cool resources where you can read more about outcome-based design at the end of this. The next slide I'm really excited about because I've been wanting to see this slide for like 3 years, and we finally just managed to pull it together for this presentation. So you can see this like an epic collage of the same multifamily development all across like so many of our applications. So you have Revit at the center, and we're seeing just like a 3D view, and we can do documentation for our building there. But if we kind of like back up in project time and think a little bit more about pre-design and concept modeling, you can take like this awesome massing that you develop in Format, you can bring it into Revit, you can carry all of that data over into your Revit workflow. From there, you can take the same data and pass it through to Max. You can realize awesome cloud rendering with our cloud rendering solutions. We also can generate insights, both from Format and from Revit, to get real-time analysis. The same data can all flow into BIM 360 Design, where you can see it in the cloud. And even Dynamo for Revit and Generative Design in Revit integrates into Revit. So we have this like unbelievable suite of products and opportunities for doing really cool stuff. And I love that this slide just shows that real like connected story. Jacob, any other comments here?
No, this is actually, you know, that statement you made in the beginning of this sort of dream view of showing all the different parts and pieces and how they sort of pinwheel out of each other. This is a really good way to tell it. So it's really big. So it's nice for me to see that as well.
Yeah. So I think what we wanted to do for the next part of the presentation is just show you some recent videos that have come out of these different areas of interest for architecture and engineering. So we'll start with conceptual design, and we're going to go through all of the other pieces of the honeycomb. When we think about conceptual design, there are a lot of different ways to achieve similar things using either Format or Revit or Dynamo. There are many different approaches to do conceptual design, but I wanted to focus on Format because I think that the product team has been doing really cool things. And let's kind of show the latest video that we have of Format. So in this video, we're really looking at what you can do. You can use, I think this is Dynamaps, to bring in the site. You can do early stage concept modeling. You can run energy analysis in Insight. You can do a solar shadow study. You can do radiation understanding and energy studies. And it looks like even we're showing walkthroughs here. It's a little bit slow, but you can do a pretty reasonable walkthrough and then bring all of that data over into Revit and be able to do documentation. So it's a pretty powerful early stage concept modeler. And what I like about Format is that it is like so simple to get started. It's really easy to just draw that early stage geometry. Jacob, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, no, it's really kind of an ideal tool for making sure that those additional sort of 3D sketches transition into something that's you can leverage throughout the remainder of the process. A lot of similar tool sets, really, you just sort of make this beautiful shape, this beautiful form, and then it becomes this relic that is always like, oh, we have to go back, we have to modify. How do we do that? And it doesn't necessarily transition as smoothly as Format does, which is the big sort of advantage there.
Yeah. And then another cool thing that's happened recently with Format is that we've been integrating Dynamo. So remember, we're talking about connected BIM. So here we're showing an ability to update geometry within the Format model based on a Dynamo graph and using a series of nodes. And so right now you're just seeing the Format model with the 3 levels. You're seeing a spline, and the spline in the Format model is actually what's driving the path for the geometry to be developed. Like, Jacob, do you want to speak a little more to this one?
Yeah, what's really great about this is it's using that same kind of concept within your Dynamo graph. And actually, a lot of these pieces, your graphs that you build for Dynamo for Revit can actually be used within Dynamo for Format as well. So it's effectively just curve dot coordinate system at point, and then array your geometry and finally bake it back into Format the same way you might move that geometry into Revit as a direct shape. This really opens up the realm of possibilities in terms of building more complex or sort of repeated patterns within the larger Format ecosystem. So I'm really excited to sort of see what you guys are going to wind up doing with this, and I plan on having a lot of fun with it myself as well, if I'm being totally honest.
Nice. So we can go now to take a look at Format and InfraWorks. So this is a pretty cool workflow where you use InfraWorks to bring the site context into Format. And basically, there's a model builder in InfraWorks that uses data from the cloud to build specified models from like very specific areas. So in this case, the video eventually will show taking a location in Boston's Seaport and yeah, being able to aggregate all of that model data and then bring it into Format. And it's pretty important in this case that you want to use an FBX format. So the idea, I believe, is export as FBX and then import into Format as FBX. And you're able to have this seamless data flow and also align so that the location in Format is matching to the realistic site location, and then you can still run your analysis and everything off of this. Jacob, any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think the real benefit here is going to be to sort of be able to tie these sort of different scales of design, because it's very rare that when you're designing just a building that you don't need more of that context, and sort of be able to understand how your building relates to the context and how the context relates to your building over time is really a key piece of doing good building design. And it's something that there hasn't really been a great sort of solution for building those pieces together historically. So yeah, another piece that I'm really excited to get to play with.
Speaking of making connections and things that we've been wanting for a long time, Format and Revit are doing cool things with programming right now. So you can see in this next video, like I was saying earlier, it is like so easy to do blocking in Format. It's very intuitive. And in this video, what we're seeing is a series of blocks being created for a variety of programs. So we're going to see blocks created for office, for retail, and for lobby areas. And what's pretty neat is that when you create all of these things, you're able to see gross area immediately. You're able to see site area immediately. And then you're able to understand the floor area ratio and also bring all of this into Revit. And you'll be able to do quantification and labeling. So you can see here you're in the Format environment, you have your program, it seems like your existing conditions underway, and this shows just really how easy it is to push and pull to create geometry for your existing condition studies and really develop your context in a bespoke way if you're not bringing it in from Dynamaps or something else, for example. Here's the programming blocks. Jacob, do you want to pick up from here?
Yeah, so from this point forward, you can actually take those programming blocks out and do kind of your individual studies within them, understand what the implications of the sun and massing are within this conceptual environment, and make additional changes so that as you build content out, as you make those updates, you're going to be able to sort of intersect those with levels, create the groups, and really build that out so that you have a sort of functional programming environment that works relative to this sort of original massing study. And really the big key here is you're not going to be limited to just this format environment. Because we do have that sort of Revit integration, you're able to sort of review your FAR and eventually import that format file into Revit as a mass that you're going to be able to work with additionally downstream within the overall process. So you can reuse these parts and pieces. It's not sort of one of those, again, sort of one and done. I did the study and now I've got this relic that what can I really work with here? And you can see this is, again, smart data. We're just using basic tags here. We're not sort of working with text, which is a really great piece. Your information's added into your building information model at an earlier stage.
Nice. So let's switch gears a little bit. So we were just thinking about conceptual design. Now we're going to move on to visualization. And I'm thinking we'll just go through maybe 2 examples. We'll do the format for visualization example, and then the one after that, which is a Max example. So for format for Viz, this is pretty interesting. The format team has come up with this really cool video. And in this video, they basically show taking your model directly from format into Revit. And I don't know if everyone on the call is familiar with this yet, but Revit 2021 just came out and there's this really awesome enhanced realistic visual style. And you can actually walk through the model with this beautiful live rendering in a way that you really couldn't before in Revit. And it's super exciting. Jacob, any thoughts?
Yeah, this is going to be game changing for a lot of offices where previously you had to sort of work at sort of how do I get the Inkscape running? How do I get these other sort of add-ins functioning so I can get these sort of better quality visualizations within my sort of Revit environment. To reduce sort of the need for that, for, you know, not to necessarily remove it because, you know, there are some benefits to those kind of tools, but to sort of expand upon that so that you can take advantage of those tools without having to go through so many different changes. It's a really good sort of additional benefit to our users.
Yeah, cool. And then the next thing that we'll take a look at is using 3D Studio Max for visualization. So 3D Studio Max is awesome and super powerful, and there's a lot to explore in this user interface. So the thing that we're looking at here is how to use an HDR image to light up the exterior shot when we're using Arnold as a renderer, and also obviously 3D Studio Max. So in this case, we're using the 3D Studio Max asset library to centralize assets. So you're seeing the library popping up here. And it's possible to actually drag and drop HDR images directly into the viewport. And when you do this, you can use active shade Arnold rendering to get this really nice image immediately, as you're seeing here. You're able to work then with this environment map. And within Max, there's this thing called the Slate Editor, which helps you to edit things like environment maps or backgrounds. So in this video, we're looking at using the Slate Editor for doing customized adjustments to backgrounds and also getting really fast render previews. One of the things that's come up recently when I have a conversation with the Max team is like, what is the really compelling thing about Max that sets it apart from other renders? And it's really this like real-time rendering that you get to see immediately the impact of the lighting and the iterative rendering process. To me, I think that's the most valuable and most awesome thing about 3D Studio Max, beyond all of the really cool additions you can do with things like animation. There's another video online about adding rain to a scene, for example. That's pretty cool. So yeah, and here really we're able to adjust like exposure controls and use an image control dial that adds more flair to the image by adjusting contrast, highlights, and midtones until you get this really cool final rendering. Any other Max thoughts, Jacob?
Max is actually one of those things that, despite all my experience, I've never actually touched, and it's so impressive, but it's just so like I don't know where to start. But it does have a much easier sort of entry point than most people realize. It's just a matter of, you know, I'm too into my Dynamo stuff to sort of step out and help out on the Mac and learn myself some Mac stuff. So.
Yeah, maybe Jacob and I can go back and forth on Twitter and have a top 10 things to know to get started in Max and Dynamo war. How's that sound?
That sounds good. I like that. I need a new Twitter war.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so I think we can skip at this point probably to project delivery and the one thing that we wanted to talk about there, because
Okay.
I think we have not a lot of time, but definitely a lot of stuff to go through.
Yeah, so I'll take over at sort of the project delivery here. So the big sort of thing, and within our BIM 360 ecosystem, the one thing that's always been missing has been a great tool to enable communication. We've got ways for you guys to move data back and forth without any sort of real issues, but never really a way to sort of help you guys talk and visualize and discuss what those problems are. There is, however, a new Zoom integration that's really going to open up a new world of possibilities for what you can do within this context. So the great thing with this is it's going to mean you're going to have ways to sort of collaborate, not just in terms of what data you're viewing, but also in terms of what content you have access to. Cool. Anything to add to that?
No, I'm super excited. The idea of Zoom in a BIM 360 environment is like groundbreaking. Yeah. I can't wait to test it.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm thrilled for it. So, all right. So from there, let's transition into talking a little bit about computational design, and then we're going to get into a little bit of the generative stuff. So the big change for Dynamo in probably the last year has been an introduction to a whole new sort of world of users within the Dynamo ecosystem. And that's with the introduction of Dynamo for Civil 3D. So we're going to show kind of a couple quick views here. First one is going to sort of create your ramp wings, right? And this is the kind of process that's really, really time consuming to build those pieces out, figure out where they want to be, look at what those elevation changes need to happen. The great thing is with Dynamo, it's as simple as just sort of building up that initial graph that we saw and saying go. If we want to change the width on those ramps from 6 to 8 feet or change the location, go ahead and update that version and then say go again. The content will just sort of pull itself in as go. This is another example of using sort of COGO points to sort of automate the placement of different sort of content. You can see we're placing water meters here, again, using base Dynamo, but the same content also applies through Dynamo Player as well. This is going to apply to all your content beyond your other pieces because this is still the smart Civil 3D environment, which is really nice. This is also nodes now for working with pipe networks, which is really great. It means we can automate sort of the resizing of our pipe content. And again, this is going to work through Dynamo or Dynamo Player. So if we want to change this to a 30-inch pipe, the whole network is now updated, which is really great. And then last but not least, we're going to look at sort of manipulating surfaces. So thickness of surfaces is something that's always really, really difficult when you're dealing with your site content. Dynamo has enabled new ways to do that and get to that content in a much faster method than what you had before, which is really going to be a huge time saver for a lot of users.
Yeah, and this is so exciting for anyone who's studied real estate development because you've probably done many of these things by hand. And the idea of having an algorithm to help resolve a lot of these site design issues is pretty great.
Yep. All right, so let's talk a bit about Dynamo for road design now too. What you're seeing here is kind of one of those sort of traditional, like, hey, this is a really time-consuming piece. So we can actually automate the creation of all the light poles throughout the entire project with one simple Dynamo graph, right? Where we know what sort of spacing they have to be. We know that they need to be fairly equally spaced. We know that they need to be smart too, so that they're reporting their correct location. This is a fairly simple piece to be able to manage. Beyond that, we can also use something as simple as a CSV, import that content, and then automate the creation of the additional pieces such as our signage and everything else. Once you sort of know where that piece is, the modeling of it sort of becomes more second nature by allowing Dynamo to drive this through automation, which is really great. And again, this extends beyond just signage and other pieces, but also all the way to your guardrails and any other sort of linear coordinate system piece can be automated so that you get to this higher degree of design with a higher degree of sort of level of development that you can leverage going forward. All right, next up, we want to talk a little bit about rail design, because obviously if it works with our roadway designs, it's also going to work with our railway design. So stuff like concrete tie placements, which can be very, very difficult to sort of have to lay out by hand, very tedious, time-consuming process. Again, thanks to Connected BIM, we're able to very quickly automate this process and generate that content very quickly. If we wanted to sort of work at placing our catenary overhead pole locations, we can do that very quickly as well. Again, all by working with this initial data set, build the graph through Dynamo to automate that placement, and then say go. This will even allow you to adjust dynamic blocks once they've been placed by just manipulating the parameter sets. So lighting, ties, any other sort of linear, sort of repetitive aspect can now be automated throughout. And it does also bind that content into the file. So if you have to update after the fact, you don't have to worry about that content that you previously created having to be manually edited. You can go back and rerun that previous graph and revise that content. All right, and then one more example. So this is one that I put together. You don't have to be doing really complex linear systems either to be able to take advantage of this. If you've got kind of a basic AutoCAD background, we've all been in that sort of situation when laying out sites where it's like, hey, how close does the tree get to be to the house? Well, I need to make sure I've got 20 feet away from the house. And you can actually write a fairly simple Dynamo graph. You can see it on the background over here on the side. All that content can now just sort of drive the properties that are set relative to those other parts and pieces. So if I put the house at a given location, the other trees are going to have, different trees are going to have to be demolished and different trees will get to remain. If I copy multiple houses, or if I delete an individual house, the trees will sort of automatically update themselves. And this is going to allow users to not just sort of leverage this content sort of repeatedly, but also allow users to sort of get into further upstream workflows, such as sort of automating the layout of the placement of the houses on the sites to ensure that we're demolishing the least amount of trees, which is usually thought of as quite a nice thing.
Yeah, this is an awesome workflow. Pretty excited about this.
Yeah, it's a fairly simple graph too once you get a little bit of Dynamo chops under your hood. So, and towards that part, as we mentioned before, sort of opening into generative design, there have been some great new advantages or releases in that end as well. Project Refinery, which has been out for a little over a year, maybe a year and a half now, has sort of come to fruition, and it's now a part of Revit 2021 with generative design for Revit. This is an example that Emily and I actually put together a while back, sort of looking at how this can work within a project environment. So you can take something as simple as a basic program that says what spaces want to be next to each other and what spaces are loud and what spaces are quiet, and sort of optimize to make sure that spaces that want to be adjacent to each other, like our master bath wants to be next to our master bed, not on the other side of the hallway like we had there, you can automate that and allow that content to be placed automatically in the best method possible to optimize for either an individual setting, such as adjacency, or noise sort of distribution, so the quiet spaces are next to quiet spaces, or whatever else you may have, and then evaluate all the different options that you get as we get into these sort of conflicting goals, right? One option may be better than the other, and you may not have a metric for that. This isn't telling the designer what to do, but it's sort of guiding their hand as they're making that decision process. So instead of having to sort of come up with something on the fly or make a guess based on their intuition, they're able to make a more informed decision. And this really expedites the process and allows designers to spend more time doing content like we're about to see here, with the creation of the renderings and stuff like that.
So as the designer on the project, it was actually really cool to get the program already worked out to my client's rigorous specifications, and then be able to go back and forth and have a dialogue about, like, hey, all right, now that we've got this, what do you think about these beds? Like, what do you think about this facade articulation? How about this giant arc over the corridor that connects to a river that goes through the property? So I got to have a lot of fun, and a lot of the tedious work was really taken out of the process. And this was just a cute rendering in our cloud rendering solution of the final design. So this shows that you can really go end to end from, like, numbers and generative to a really nice visualization of a bespoke residential project.
Cool. Yeah, I'm always impressed when I get to see this. And this has continued to sort of impact customers today. This is an example from Aaron Borwick, which is looking at sort of, hey, we know that everybody, when they get back to the office, we're going to have some sort of different constraints on our space. If we left them as they were before, we're not necessarily going to sort of get those social distancing that we require while maintaining the number of seats. So are there better ways to lay out our space overall? And so this is looking at a graph that sort of looks at the different methods of physical distancing to ensure that we've got that space. Sort of, can we put dividers up on desks? Can we change the rotation of the desks? Can we ensure that after we've done all this, we can still make use of those movable partitions? So you can see here a couple different versions of this graph. So the first one here is looking to optimize using the individual desk family that we've selected there. Looking at a few different methods in terms of how this is placed with this given algorithm. And you can see the rotation of the desks are changing, the spacing between the desks are changing, and you can start to look at how many desks did we actually get, what is our minimum spacing, and use that to inform which of those options is the best, or is there something else that we still haven't sort of examined. As you can see there, we're not able to move those partitions, so maybe that's not the best option. Another method is to work off a grid as opposed to that linear structure. This is the method of the sort of looking at the grid algorithm in terms of how closely can we space these pieces together, which gets us another fairly decent option, not necessarily great in terms of some aspects of the sort of the adjacency, and it is still blocking off some of those partitions, but we do get a decent sort of density of desks. Option 3 is sort of what he's referring to as the grid object placement. And this is going to sort of, again, change the algorithm that's used to lay these pieces out, change the geometry system to get, yet again, new results. And we finally got that option where we're going to be able to make use of those movable partitions as well as having a decent amount of desks, but they're a little close together. And this last option is going to be to sort of look at what if we had an offset grid? How many desks could we fit there? Could we do 3 rows? Could we do 2? What's the best methodology? And allow them to sort of sort through those options and pick out the one that's sort of the best fit relative to what we're after here. And so you can see here with this kind of a staggered setup, we've got really good social distancing. We don't have to worry about as many of the sneeze guard partitions is what I'll refer to them as, and still have access. So you can see 4 different methods for using that tool and getting 4 different sets of results. And those were all built fairly quickly by seasoned Dynamo graph author. Any thoughts on that, Emily?
Oh gosh, my thoughts on that is I'm excited because I have a series of 5 pages to walk everyone on the call through, and it's going to give you access to this information so that you can go and do this. So this is out there and open. Michelle, do I have time? Hopefully. Okay.
Yes, you absolutely have time. When I saw that other slide, I thought we were done. Yeah, keep going. Keep going. Everyone is loving it. So great job.
Oh, good. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I didn't want this whole presentation to get too heavy into COVID-19, but we'll talk a little bit about it. So the first major resource that I think you should be aware of is our business strategy and marketing group just released a page called The Future is a Design Challenge. This is an awesome page to go get started in understanding automation and generative design, and then read through some examples of people who have used it successfully for things like retail services, renovations, and stadium design. You'll see a story with like Hassel, Cox, and HKS, for example, that use BIM and Dynamo, connected BIM, for their stadium design services. And also there's a nice video of the product team in there that talks about their experience on the product team and working with the product, which is kind of neat to see. The next thing that I think is pretty important to read, there's an ebook that's just come out. And this was based off of an AU course that I presented last fall called The Business Value of Computational and Generative Design for Executives. So this was turned into a 13-page ebook, and it's basically our position on rewriting the project strategy playbook with outcome-based design. This is like an hour-long course of me talking, so I won't dive too deep, but just be aware that this exists, and you should definitely check it out because it's the future of project strategy. The next thing I wanted you to know about is, again, our business strategy and marketing team has been working around the clock to help you when it comes to returning to the workplace. So on this page, We've got information about using generative design for desk layout, aisle spacing, and density of seating. We have information about doing mobility simulation and InfraWorks, so like literally people walking around. I believe you can do this in Max as well. We saw a good example of that yesterday from one of our coworkers. We also have a tool called CFD, which is short for Computational Fluid Dynamics, and this will help you analyze air quality and proper ventilation. And there's even information about construction, so understanding job site resiliency, how COVID-19 is shifting the supply chain, and also thinking about prefabrication solutions for emergency preparedness and hospital conversion. So there's so many resources on those pages. You should really check them out. Another really cool thing that came out yesterday that Vikram Dutt tweeted about is the Autodesk Fiscal Year 2020 Sustainability Report. And one of the nice things in here is a nod to the EC3 embodied carbon calculator that's just come out. So if we skip to the next page, there's this article from Redshift, and it's ready to reduce your construction emissions, use the embodied carbon calculator. So this is such a cool calculator. It works, I believe, in conjunction with BIM 360 design. And it pulls embodied carbon data from a third party called Environmental Product Declarations, and then compares the carbon intensity of available materials that meet required specs and enables fast climate smart substitution. So this is thrilling, and I've not seen anything like this before this year. So Jacob, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, no, that's sort of a very hot topic right now, is sort of how can we reduce sort of the embodied carbon that goes into our buildings. I get asked probably once or twice a week about, hey, how can I do this? How can I do this? And this is the tool that I'm sort of pointing people to, because it's sort of the easiest way to jumpstart your efforts into that form.
Yeah. So next two slides, we just have epic lists of links that we'll work with Michelle to figure out how to share with you, so you can, get to all of the stuff that we're talking about. We can probably post on Twitter or something too. And then beyond that, Jacob, I thought it'd be awesome for him to dive a little deeper into Dynamo for people who are new to it, because it's so complex.
Yeah, so Dynamo is really a very, very big and very hot topic, and it's really sort of difficult for a lot of people to get started with. You can learn a whole lot of information about complex modeling, or working with different data in consistent and structured manners, and automating repetitive tasks through some links that, again, we can share out. But the big piece here is sort of learning how to get started with this content. The easiest way is going to be start with the Dynamo primer. When I say start with the Dynamo primer, don't just read it, go through and do the exercises, and don't say, oh, well, this is laying out solar panels on a roof. I'm a plumbing engineer. I'm never going to have to lay out solar panels on a roof, so I can skip that. No, you can't. Believe it or not, it's not about the outcome, but the methods that were used to get there. It was very sort of specifically worked through to make sure we were picking out tasks that taught you the concepts rather than made it so that you could achieve a desired outcome. So don't skip anything, do everything once. If you struggle with it, feel free to pop in the Dynamo forum and ask a question, and we can go from, we'll sort of help you out there. One other thing I wanted to talk about is, where can you find Dynamo? Dynamo is very rapidly proliferating throughout the Autodesk AEC collection. So currently, Dynamo Core, also referred to as Dynamo Sandbox, which is something you can use on its own, ties into Advanced Steel, Alias, Civil 3D, Formit, Fusion, Revit, and Robot Structural Analysis. That's a pretty big sort of list there. I did add some highlighting and some bolding onto the ones that are probably a little bit more popular. Revit users have been making use of Dynamo for 4 or 5 years now. Civil 3D's got a couple of years under its belt, as well as Alias right now, and Formit too. Fusion is a little bit older, sort of a less modernized sort of integration, but there's a lot of great work coming there on that end. And Robot and Advanced Steel are also always in the mix. And there's also great third-party integrations with other Autodesk products, such as AutoCAD through the Link DWG package, Navisworks through DynaWorks package, Maya through Dynamaya, which isn't a package, it's a separate installer. You can just Google Dynamaya if you're a Maya user and get some interaction there. And there's other non-Autodesk products as well that you can definitely take advantage of. All right, so all of that said, we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of time to talk to you guys as well and answer whatever questions you may have. So we're going to turn this over to questions. Unless, Emily, did you have anything else to add?
No, that's pretty much it. And I hope everyone found this helpful. This is everything I would have wanted to hear when I was working in an architecture firm. So there you go.
Excellent, excellent presentation. I really appreciate you both coming together on this. I think you play off of each other very well, made it entertaining as well as educational. So thank you both. We have had quite a few questions coming in, quite a few comments as well. I'm going to share some of the comments and some of the questions we've already answered, as well as bring up some that we have not answered. So one of the first questions that came out was, I've been out of work for a while and I'm just now getting back into AutoCAD. Should I go into AutoCAD or Revit? And um, I highly recommend jumping right into Revit, but I want to hear from you as those experts. What would you suggest to them?
Ooh.
I have an idea. So we've been working on this connected BIM story. The whole presentation is about connected BIM. Honestly, I don't think you can lose either way. And it depends on who you are and what you do. If you're more of a consultant, if you're more into engineering, if you're more into detailing, looking at AutoCAD might be a very reasonable starting point. But if you're in an architecture firm and your firm's like thinking about transitioning in the future to BIM, or maybe the types of projects you want to work on are more geared towards a BIM environment. Like if you, for example, are looking to work at a company that does multifamily development, I would say like absolutely you have got to do BIM. You just can't do that in AutoCAD, right, Jacob?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
The scope of projects that you're getting involved with will sort of inform the tool, right? It doesn't necessarily make sense to have something that has sort of some amazing tools for structural analysis if you're not going to do any structural analysis, right? So if you're doing just sort of single family home design and it's all read out of the code book to find out what size of the wood framing member has to be, you probably don't need to get too far in the weeds. So definitely tailor that based on the type of work that you want to do. One thing I will say though, whatever direction you go, you cannot go wrong with learning some methods of automation. So getting into some kind of computational design with Dynamo, or even if you wanted to go really crazy and get really deep into the weeds on connected BIM and go into Forge, like that would be another great sort of method to do that. And it would really set you apart as an architect with that kind of a tool set. You'd almost be able to say, hey, I know this type of architecture and I know this type of tool set to make sure that we are being efficient. What kind of opening do you have for me? How can I help you out? Without having to sort of, spend as much time figuring out where you fit in the new world, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, honestly, when my nephew has nothing to do and he's bored, I'm like, okay, well, go to dynamobim.org and read the primer. I'm at that level of evangelism. If you want to do something that's really going to set yourself apart, like go learn process automation, and there's so much demand for that, so you can't lose there.
Great. Excellent. Another question that came in, and I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. They asked if Format and Dynamo were in the suite, and I believe what they're really talking about is the AEC collection. So hopefully you don't still have the old suite, but you have the AEC collection. If that's true, yes, Format and Revit and Civil 3D and InfraWorks and so many, basically all the products that they talked about today are all in that that collection. So yes, absolutely. The next thing is, my office is still a huge fan of SketchUp. Is Format a good replacement for that?
Yes, I would say at this point, absolutely. If you had asked me 3 years ago, I don't know if I'd give the same answer. So right now, I was so excited because I was doing some of the modeling that you see in the early part of the presentation for that big connected BIM page in Format. And they've made it so that it's so easy to work in. They made so you can look at a top view, you can look at elevations, you can have orthogonal views. It's not just perspective working. So it feels like more realistic architectural workspace than SketchUp, for example.
Yeah. Two other things I'll add to that. First is you're going to get some added functionality with Format through collaboration. So you can actually host a collaborative work session. Imagine two people being able to work in the same SketchUp model and play off each other at the same time. That's a feature that's available and unique to Format, which is really great. And you're also not going to lose that sort of data that you put into the model in that initial phase in Format that tends to go away when you import that into a BIM environment in Revit. If you're using SketchUp, it persists if you're using the format content. So that's another great reason to maintain or review switching that tool. It does have some great importers too. So if you've got some great SketchUp content, you can reuse a lot of the stuff that you've got.
Excellent. We've had quite a few questions on this next one, and I'll answer it for you. Will we get any certificate for this web seminar? Absolutely. What will happen, I will take all of the registrations and I'll put them into our system, and you will receive another email that will have you do a second survey. So I apologize for having to, do 2 surveys, but they both provide us a lot of great information. One, the first survey provides us information on what you want to learn next, but then the other one provides us that ability to provide a certificate of completion for participating and coming to this seminar. So we really appreciate you coming, and we know that you need those professional development hours that you can't get right now because you can't have your lunch and learn. So we want to provide that to you. So yes, you can do that. You'll get a separate email with that link. Okay, so coming back to the integration with Zoom, they're asking why Zoom and not GoToWebinar, because there's been some security issues with Zoom lately, and this question came up several times. So obviously a lot of people are worried.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have the answer for that. I don't think Jacob or I would have the answer for that. And this is like so hot off the presses that I don't think either of us has tested it to this point, and we've just been reading about it. So I think in the future there could be a pretty cool webinar that focuses more on the functionality of Zoom within BIM 360.
Yep. One thing I will add to that is a lot of these integrations, it's not actually written by just Autodesk. It's also written by the software that we're integrating. So it's kind of, it takes 2 to sort of get that sort of content built up, and GoToWebinar may not have seen the value for it, whereas Zoom may have. I don't know specifically that that's the case, but that's it. And then the other aspect on the security concerns, remember, any kind of video chat platform has pretty much the same security concerns. It's just a question of how sort of prolific the story of it is in the media. So don't feel that just because you're not on Zoom, you're totally safe. That's not the case. Keep your updates installed for all your products, including ours.
Absolutely. Yeah, hackers will try to get in any way they can, right?
Yeah.
All right. Dave Peterson asked the question, I see now that Dynamo is playing with Civil 3D. Are there any plans to be able to make that Civil 3D file something that can be used for the actual site inside Revit as its own mass? So do you want to talk a little bit how working with BIM 360 and Civil 3D and Revit work together, and then maybe talk a little bit about that mass?
I'll let Jacob handle this.
Emily, I'll let you talk about the Civil 3D to BIM 360 to Revit, and I will jump in with some additional content that I can share on that front to go above and beyond.
So it's possible to do topography with Civil 3D by points, and then it's possible to bring that surface into Revit and then to interact with it as though it's a normal Revit topo surface. And that exchange happens through our BIM 360 design platform. So, oh gosh, it's another connected BIM story. Yeah, and then Jacob.
It's also possible to leverage your Civil 3D content through Dynamo within Revit. There's actually a tool, I don't have a link to it, unfortunately, handy, but if you Google Civil Connector GitHub, it will bring you to a tool set that will actually allow you to tie your Civil 3D models into Revit, and whatever content changes you make in Revit, back into Civil 3D, whatever changes you make back in Civil 3D, back into Revit. So it's a sort of bi-directional link, which is really great. Definitely want to leverage that as much and whenever you can, because again, it's a non-destructive workflow. Oh no. Michelle, I have lost audio.
Everyone seems frozen. Am I still on, or did you lose me altogether?
I have you now, and I see Emily's camera moving again, so we may have been through whatever internet hiccup that was. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
We're back.
Perfect. Perfect. So I was just saying we do have a free course on that connection between Civil 3D, BIM 360, and Revit, completely free for you. I'm putting that in the Q&A panel and sending it to everyone so that if you would like to try that workflow out, you can go try that. If you don't have BIM 360 though, you would need to do the free trial. So that's the only thing. You can't do a 30-day free trial though. Let's see, let me get down to my questions. I know we're getting 5 minutes left, so I'm trying. Okay, Jacob mentioned a Dynamo graph that was automatically demoing trees based on distance to houses. Was that just being manually run every time something changed, or is there a way to add a hook to run Dynamo when something changes?
So that was actually leveraging a hook from Dynamo that's just automatic run mode. So every time you make a modification to your Civil 3D content, Dynamo is going to see that element changed and then kick off running the entire graph. So when you go back and rewatch the recording, you watch that animation, I'm not ever interacting with my Dynamo graph. It's just on the side. I'm only interacting in Civil 3D, and Civil 3D saying, okay, I need to change these pieces. So if you need to go back and revise which content's being updated, you just go back, open the Dynamo graph, and get to work.
Great. And a lot of questions came in on this. They are all asking about all those links you shared. Specifically, one is asking for the Future of Design ebook. Just to let everyone know, what we'll do is I'll get those links from Emily, and I'll make sure that they are included with the recording when we send that email out.
Awesome.
All right. Let's see. Is the embodied carbon tool, will it be available to test in the educational version? How do we get a hold of that?
That's a good question. I don't know the offering in terms of availability, so we should probably follow up with our sustainability team and get more information on the EC3 calculator. It is part of BIM 360 design and usable from that platform when your data is there.
Perfect. And let's see. So this is an off topic, but I'll bring it up. I am out of work now, but thinking of going into project management. Any advice for them? I would say get your PMP. That's my personal opinion. Having that project management professional certification can open some doors for you.
Yeah, actually, getting into data analysis and visualization would also be pretty important. I find that the project managers that I work with, when they have a clear dashboard and a clear understanding of what's going on for the team, that's incredibly helpful. So thinking about dashboarding, data, and analytics.
Great.
I will second that to Emily, and for the PMP as well, by the way. I'm trying my PMP because they have recently updated their exams and everything, so I'm trying to do it as well. So it's a great, I think, suggestion.
Yeah. And I wanted to bring this up too. Naman, will you come back on video, please?
Oh,
So Naman's Maisarwala has been helping in the background answer a lot of the questions. He is an expert elite that joins various meetups to help with that. So I want to give you a round of applause, Naman, for all of your help as well. So, all right, we have 2 minutes left. Let's see what else we can answer. For those questions that we don't get to, because I do have quite a few, what I'll do is I'll pass those off to Jacob and Emily, and I'll send out those emails once I get those answers from them. Okay. Okay, so Scott Dean has a great comment here. This is great. I hope to implement it in my small office. That's amazing news. Thank you, Scott. Thesla is saying EC3 from building transparency has interaction with BIM 360 for importing the geometry is the new tool inside BIM 360. So I'm not sure if that's more of a comment or a question. Maybe I'll try opening up your line and see if we can get a little bit more information on what you're talking about there. Let's see if I can find you. Oh, yep, there you are. Okay. Thesla, I've unmuted you. Are you able to speak? Maybe. Doesn't look like you have a microphone set up. Okay. Maybe we'll try to figure that out and work with you offline to get your question answered. Derek is asking, is the generative design tool available for Format?
So the generative design tool for Revit 2021, so generative design for Autodesk Revit 2021, is actually a sort of integration with Dynamo. The big difference with the generative design for Revit is you don't ever see any of the Dynamo interactions. So it's certainly something you can do with Format. In fact, the example we gave of space planning is something that I had previously generated with Format. To sort of say, hey, what would happen if we generated this geometry as groups and blocks within Format to sort of expand on that passing environment. So yes, it's absolutely there. You do have to access it in a slightly different way, but it is something that you can take advantage of.
Excellent, excellent. So I do apologize. I just noticed it's top of the hour, so we've ran out of time. Like I said before, though, the questions we did not get answered, I'll pass those off to Emily and Jacob. We'll get their answers and I'll email those out. So if you are interested in presenting a topic or if there is something very specific you'd like to learn, make sure you fill out the survey at the end. I want to thank Jacob, Emily, and Naman all for your help in making this happen. You guys are amazing, and I hope everyone got as much out of it as I did.
Thank you so much. Super fun, Michelle.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Talk
Bye, guys.
soon. Bye.